the community to critique us, to criticize us, to grade us, to find out or degrade us on how we communicate with one another, how we fellowship, how we self-identify. There's always a critic in the bush. And so we're going to be we're going to weigh in on some of the current events. There's one of many organizations which is composed of several Christian denominations. And this particular group has come together specifically to viciously attack and dismantle our community. However, recent events illustrates that while they were taking out the fine-tooth comb, Moon and I, there's an article called Sadie's Comb, and it talks about the way you go through with a fine-tooth comb, combing through memories and the like. So this is kind of combing through the nicks and the knacks of our community, only to find that there's space to examine or be introspective in their own communities. And that was kind of, for us, a similitude to the Christian construct in general, that Christianity has risen to look down on us or to look down on others when there's so many holes in Christianity that people are escaping through because those things have not been tended to. There's a lot of neglect in terms of looking at their own theology. As some of you know, there are many authors on our panel. There's Hulda, who isn't with us at the moment, but we have also Imuna, Only Love, and Malaka. And we have been looking at many aspects of the conditions of our people through various lenses, through our own various disciplines and expertise. And there's a lot of literature, because we're researchers, so there's a lot of literature that speaks about those neglected spaces in Christianity. All of these conversations and all of these books that are written that sort of have examined and unpacked Christian doctrine, they're not unpacking our doctrine. They're unpacking what looks like there needs to be further investigation in Christianity. So I guess my question to open up everything, when we're thinking about our Hebrew character and we're looking at these oppressive doctrines, what are your thoughts? Like, is Christianity, or does Christianity seem to be overly invested in creating propaganda efforts against Israel instead of the doctrines coming out of their own spaces? Are they not like libraries filled with hermeneutics and investigative theology to really kind of unpack what's going on over there? Is there really time to be over here worrying about what Israel is doing? Our first round is dedicated to that question. Again, the question for my panel is, does Christianity seem overly invested in propaganda efforts against Israel instead of the doctrines coming out of their own spaces? I'll start with Ima. Okay, thank you.
Hold on, taking my thought out, because I normally get good information from the sisters. It's interesting you said that, because I was watching documentaries. I can't remember half the books I've read over 35, 40 years. In the beginning, which all of us know, church was a means of escape and unity with us. We read the history book. At the time, it worked for us. Because not only we came together, but we came together for escape, relaxation, and for strength through all the trials and tribulations with slavery. But it was one observation, and one thing that was overlooked, is that a woman, she not only on Saturday, but sometimes on Sunday, she comes together up under a tree. I love you heard this word. And brings her people together. They speak about loving yourself. It's even in a movie too. But even through this documentary, there were women who led a lot of things, and not just talking about her in Texas, but they utilized the rebellion of knowing that this church system can work for them to better themselves, because they all had themselves. They stayed, sometimes they stayed in the same vicinity because they didn't have nowhere to go, but they worked together. As churches began to grow and men dominated, Then you had a separation. And that separation was with the community. When now church wasn't serving the community as it was man or woman, and learning some other doctrines involved. Just like I always thought as a child, that when he went away these beautiful hats and these white gloves, it was something extra. But come to find out, the white gloves were used because when blacks came for communion, they didn't want to touch the black people's hands.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's so much information how we assimilated in this church doctrine for reasons that we thought at the time it did bring us together. But as time went on and we started branching out, Detroit, Chicago, and New York, moving from the south to these three cities, we were exposed to the fact that we can make a living, we can do better, we can have better housing, but not without disruption. That there were riots in the 1900s. There was displacement, and there's also such cruelty. Now the church, now bring it up today, so it's a little synopsis, and you can read it for yourself and do research. Now has become a haven, as they say, for demons. There's one thing that Hughley has said, that you want to go see a gay person, go to a church if he's sick. That the church now has demonized us to make feel that we're an oddity, where in the beginning it wasn't like that. And maybe we can learn from the past. That now the church is more of an enemy than it is a refuge. Because now it's for the aspect of money and not for the people of the poor. Because everywhere I look, poor neighborhoods, big fancy churches, and the doctrine that they choose to preach, which is an enslavement of the mentality of our people. So that's just an introduction. I would love to hear other sisters in more depth with the authors and the information that you bring forth. But that's just my introduction. Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you for that, Emma. That's a great. I didn't know that little tidbit about the white glove. We always see the ladies at the door with their white. It looks so fancy, right? I'm like, okay, that looks great, but there was an insidious background to that. Sister Shanti, what are your thoughts?
All right. Okay. I have to unmute myself from the computer as well. Hopefully people can hear me on the computer, on the hangout there. Good question. Are the Christian churches less worried about their own oppressive doctrine first before they go outside and look at everybody else's doctrine and start criticizing it? I would say, yeah, and that's on both sides, on all sides, because I hear Muslims criticizing Christians, Muslims criticizing Israelites, I hear Christians criticizing Israelites, I hear Israelites criticizing Christians. We go back and forth criticizing each other's doctrine. The main thing I see that we do have in common for most of us, even if we're so-called Muslims, Moors, Israelites, Sheiks, Buddhists, you name it, 5%ers, the majority of us came out of the Christian Sunday church. And so the Christian Sunday church, they started implanting this attitude in everybody that we're right, everybody else is wrong, and we put the fear of God as to it's the fear of man, and the fear of man is actually the fear of God. So yeah, I do hear, I hear it on all sides. However, yeah, I love to, as a believer in the New Testament and the Messiah, Yeshua, Hamashiach, or Jesus the Christ, a lot of people in this country, in America, say they follow Jesus the Christ. They say they're Christians. Well, in Matthew 7, it says, you know what? Before you can tell your brethren that they have a log or a speck in their eye, first you must remove the one out of yours. What's before you can even see clearly to tell somebody else they got something they need to take out of their eye. Right? So, yes, I do see it. And that's what I'll say to answer the question for now.
Thank you for that. Angela, this is your topic. What are your thoughts on the propaganda that has been set up and aimed at the Israelite community when there are so many issues in their own communities? And Shanti's right, there are a lot of communities doing a lot of things, but when we reduce it to what is most relevant to Israel, it is pretty much the polarity of our community versus the Christian community. So leaving it there, what are your thoughts about the propaganda efforts coming from that camp?
It's interesting because I do agree with Sister Shanti that you mentioned this almost like Christian supremacy, like we're always right, and a particular type of Christianity, like a white evangelical type of Christianity. Because I have Episcopalian friends who no critiques about Hebrews. They won't. They stay in their lane. If they want to support me in something I do, they support it, but they don't feel they have a right to come into someone else's community and tell them what type of theology they should have. So this is like a holdover of the missionary mentality. Because even when I was in Christianity, if you didn't believe the right thing, it was like, we're going to attack you publicly. I've seen people, lose careers and all types of support because they just changed what they believe, but they stayed within inside of Christianity. And so it goes into the missionary mentality that not only do you people need to be Christians, you need to be Christians in this particular way. And we can find one example of the Hebrew man who may have, killed his wife, which should never happen. It's totally unacceptable. But then we'll play that up, and we'll do whole podcasts and YouTubes on that, and we won't say anything about the crusade. I just met, a Portuguese Jewish young man a few weeks ago, and he was like, his family was impacted by the crusade. They had to send to Morocco, and you could see the pain in his eyes, even to today, though he didn't grow up in that. And he said, my country is still Catholic, and you could see the generational pain, but yet, that gets swept under the rug. But, let one Hebrew person do something, that will be amplified. And unfortunately, because there's a whole media machine behind Christianity and whole television networks and nonprofits, the negatives can be covered up and the positive can be elevated. Whereas, if the Hebrew congregation I attend is feeding like hundreds of people every week, but that won't be online. Or, no one will tell you that Hebrew rabbis helped establish the UNIA, the biggest organizing effort in American history. They helped Marcus Garvey, a Christian brother, get that organization off the ground. That stuff you have to almost, you got to go find it with a fine-tooth comb. And it baffles me why they're so, it kind of baffles me and it kind of doesn't, because I think the fact that we're being focused on so much shows that, the truth is getting out there. And I think they're very nervous about women, black women, so-called black women, leaving the church, because we're kind of the money bag of the church. Statistically, the average Christian in the world today is a woman of African descent. And, there seems to be a magnifying glass on us, but they don't look in the mirror at themselves.
That's a very good point. And that's raised several very good points. I want to talk about that a little bit. First point, and I appreciate you making the distinction that it isn't Christianity in general, and it was good to hear you say that. It is about a particular Christianity and how Christianity should look. There's this presuppositional position that Christianity is right in the way it comports itself and its own theology, and that there's a particular type of Christian that wants to make sure that the world sees the theology in that particular way. And there are other Christians who are not taking on this oppressive stance and this intrusive stance of I'm going to make you. The sister Ashanti brought out one of the New Testament principles, and it brings to mind another that says that if you go to someone who doesn't want to hear you, that you dust your feet and you leave. And there's this idea of I'm not going to dust my feet, I'm going to put my dirty feet in your living room and sit here until you do what I want you to do, is more along the lines of what we're seeing. But there are a lot of crossover communications. We have had a lot of very friendly conversations with Christians, who self-identified Christians. In fact, we have Messianics among us who have no real problems also identifying as Christians because of this similarity in the New Testament text, if not the overall theology. And I think we'll probably hear a little bit about that as we continue. But in the spirit of continuing, I want to bring Imuna into the conversation. Imuna, I know that you're holding it down over on the YouTube side. I'll see what technical difficulties are happening over there. But welcome back to the conversation. What are your thoughts about the propaganda coming up against us?
Yeah, this YouTube. It's been a while, man. It's been a while. You guys, if I gave you the link, feel free to click on it so that I can make sure it's working on my side as well. But you know, I just think it's a part. It comes with the territory. It's something that the way the whole thing is set up, you know, if there's a space that's allowed for other people to have truth in the mind of those who have been the long-standing power of religious truths, it allows the individual or the organizations to lose credibility, right? And so they have to begin to discredit so that the congregants don't leave them for something else. And I think that's just kind of what's going on. It's an attempt not to lose ground that has been gained through, you know, just look at the history of Christianity. And so I don't think it's solely towards Hebrews. I just think that it's a tactic that's used to secure what the person or people or organizations have, so to say, worked for. They feel as though, you know, they've been out here evangelizing the world and going into different corners of the world, and this is my turf. You know what I mean? And you guys are on my turf. And so we're experiencing, to a certain degree, that level of indifference. Not necessarily say, okay, let's sit down and see what you're saying. It's more like, you know, you can't be here. So, you know, as the conversation goes on, you know, I'll put in my little 2 cents, but that's kind of what I think is going on with the propaganda effort. So it's so that others won't begin to investigate, but it's actually having the reverse effect, because the more you speak about it, the more you're going to want others to come and investigate. And so I relinquish the mic.
Thank you for that. I saw your concern. Can you see me on the Hangout now?
Yes.
Is that link working?
Yeah, this link is working now. I'm a little rusty, so you guys bear with me, but yeah, it's working.
We're trying something new. So you're getting we're getting some live action here. So you're following us as we try something new. We're trying to find different ways to keep you engaged and keep you excited about what the conversation is, and different ways to have contact with us. You can contact us through the blogtalkradio.com/debate talk for you. You can also contact us on our individual pages. You can contact us at the Debate Talk for You Q&A there on Facebook, and we're live on Litbalm too on YouTube. So we look forward to hearing from you. In fact, I hear we have callers. So do we still have callers? Round 2 has concluded.
Yeah, we still have some callers standing by. Once again, that number is 319-527-6239. For those of you that's joined in, and each one is titled Doctrines of Demons. All right, so let's look at the phone lines. Let's see. Let's go to 917-345, live and air. 517-345. Can you hear me? Okay, I can hear you. I'm just listening at this time, so I don't really have a comment on speaker. All right, do me a favor. I appreciate you. Just press number 1, and whenever you're ready with a question, we'll bring you back in. Just press number 1, I'll take you off the switchboard. We appreciate you for listening to the show. Let's go to the next person. Let's go to 530-434. You're out there. Yes, greetings to all the sisters, my brothers, the VA, the grandmother, and everyone.
Hi, welcome, brother. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I always like to say on this topic concerning churches, me being raised a Baptist, coming out of the Baptist church with a lot of doctrine. And I would say locally where I live at in Marysville, California, I moved out here in 2013, and there were various, a whole bunch of churches, like on every corner. It was like crazy. And with the last couple of months, since last year of October, about 4 to 5 of them shut down, closed, because they could not maintain financially because people were leaving out of them. And we understand the beginning stages of the churches in the early 1900s were even further than that when it came to our people. The churches were active. They were based on activism and helping out the community, prosper economically, and the various other things when it came to our people. But as you see, churches are no longer the voice of the voiceless. They have deferred from that, and they decided to be open for business, change their teachings, and to keep the people within the system quietly. Let's just preach to you to death at the same time while you're being oppressed, but it's okay as long as you fill up the collection place. It's all good. And as you can see, like where I'm at locally, a lot of churches are closing because people are not being filled anymore. They're not getting anything with any substance. And the reason why I see a lot of flack when it comes to this Hebrew Israelite movement is because now when your back is against the wall, you'll do anything and you'll say anything because you remain alive like a cat being pressed against the wall and the pipes of death. And that's the issue. The churches are losing their game, they're losing their power, and they know it. That's why we have this apologist approach in the community. That's why we have all these other Christians now pumping flexing their muscles on the Hebrews now, because they know that over the years, they know it, they feel it, they know that their doctrine or their way of thinking or their way of life is in jeopardy. So they'll do anything to hold on to the power they have. And we know in America, they call it the Christian nation. It's based on the principle of Christian dome. So this is what we're getting. It's unfortunate that they have to take these measures or use these tactics to attack another movement that this is growing. But I think we all can agree when I make this point. If we didn't have laws, crusades would be currently going on to this day. There is a crusade with the propaganda, but if we didn't have laws of order, the Christians will still be taking out their guns, their weapons, still killing us. Thank you. So I just want to say that. I'm gonna fall back, love. Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you for calling. We have one more caller, and I've been open up to the panel to respond to some of the things that we have heard from the people.
All right, let's go to the caller. Sister Aisha. Sister Aisha, still out there? That's why I got us on me.
Okay. All right, so we'll come back to you. Maybe she has us on mute, or maybe she's tucked away from the line. So we've heard quite a bit from the callers that have called in and weighed in on the matter. So we hear that there's a issue of power. There's this idea of identity politics going on. Who gets to claim ownership or relevance to the text of course being our biblical record. Interestingly enough, we as the Israelite community proper do not approach the text as a theoretical, abstract, theological religion, and there's a lot of conversation around that in the way that Christians do.
And I've heard some offense to even that, because we don't conceptualize the scriptures in the same way they do. Therefore, we must be wrong. It's interesting to see even the way that we get captured in some of these narratives. It's again with the word interesting. It's interesting to see it always said that although we consider ourselves or we identify as Hebrews, we're not acknowledged by Jewish people, as if that is the standard. If there's a board somewhere that stamps our identity, if there's someone that will sign our freedom papers, then we get to be who we are identifying as. It's very much so what plantation, why are all the Negroes running off of the plantation? Where are your papers? And I know there's going to be Christians that take offense to me putting it in that way, but that's very much how the argument is presented. Who told you that you get to self-identify? That's not the identity that we've given you. It's not the identity we acknowledge for you. It is not the box that we've given you to check. You're not allowed to do it. The reach, and I recently compared one of the writings of self-proclaimed Christian apologists, and I likened some of the material to be inflammatory enough to bring back the Crusades of old. And understandably, there was a soreness there. There's a open wound there that was salted by me making that kind of reference to a historical reality in Christian historiography. And what I've noticed, that due to the political climate that we are in now, that many people are trying to distance themselves from this historical reality, this historical truth about what Christians have been complicit in terms of their oppressive theology. And it isn't just about the way they have treated brown bodies through time and across space and region and culture, but also the way they have dealt with women, the way they have dealt with class. This idea of division, there's a lot of fingers in the pot when we're looking at oppressive theology, and it's all on the same hand of Christianity, and it's very uncomfortable, it seems, for many of them to have to be confronted with their own realities and their own truths and their own historical placement. So when we're talking now about harmful doctrines, I'm going to push the conversation forward and just kind of remind that on previous shows on UTP and TRC, as well as the many community conversations on our own pages, it used that Israelites have supported, they have brought with them a lot of our more destructive doctrines from the church. So I would submit this question to the panel. What are your thoughts on the role that the church, or as Olila pointed out, white evangelicals of a particular type, have had on the genesis and development of harmful theology and its effects on the community of which, by community we're talking about the Israelite community? How has some of their harmful theologies negatively affected, so much so I would say, as per our title, corrupted some of our Hebrew aspirations? I will open that question to Ima Yehudi.
Wow. A lot of stuff going around in my head. You know, let's go with the aspect of women. Not only in the church, but women leading in the Israeli movement. We always have to define a unique definite of this day. And yet at the same time, because we study us, we know that we can bring in such capacity with people. What I mean is, for a while they utilize the history of who we are to bring us in. I remember back in the 70s and 80s, we start pulling up history, possibly that we're the Israelites. And then in turn, went back into the same ideology, JP, worshiping him, and going by what the pastor said. And even today, and I'm only speaking as because your sisters are out there, you know what's going on. I'm a little withdrawn from that because I'm dealing with another level here. But what I can remember is the degradation that they put on females in ruling class, which was the male. And even now, young people are waking up, going into these churches and being kicked out because they understand that the church isn't the catalyst for their survival. And we always look for recognition through nations and not recognition among ourselves. And you think about this movie when this sister said, be grateful, look at your arms and your legs, you're beautiful, your woolly hair, your skin, your lips, your eyes. And you don't look back to see the positive things coming out of this church genre. Your woolly hair now has become more evil intent. It's like Oprah. He made an excuse why he didn't bring people in his church. No one was outraged. There were comments, but no one was outraged. And then the next day, the day after that, he had a big congregation where these people are manipulated, where they're giving false doctrine, and people are buying it. People who are poor are still giving. So what do? I'm going to throw it out there as a people to get us aware, to get something started, to understand we can validate ourselves. We don't need a congregation to validate who we are. And I'm especially talking about the women. There's some very strong, knowledgeable women on this line. They have a wealth of information. I'm quite sure living that information. And that's what's important. To get this out of this doctrine that is tearing our people apart. In what ways can we devise solutions to eradicate all this? Because it's a mess. But I'd like to hear from the sisters on the panel for enlightenment and nurture. Toda.
Toda for that, Iwan. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. We'll move down the panel now and open the mic for Amuna Israel. Amuna, what are your thoughts about the influence or potential influence that the church has on some of the more harmful and injurious theology that we find ourselves up against here in the Israelite community?
All right. I think it's part of the process. I know my answers tonight probably going to be really short as I'm trying to work out this other side. So let me know if it's sounding good on the YouTube. But I think it's part of the process that, the text says, again, people know this, of my people who call by my name will, humble themselves and pray. This is a response to finding yourself scattered and in different institutions, in different places where different idols are. And the Most High is like, this is an awakening process. And so you have to, because our ancestors rejected the Creator on many levels, this is the process that we have to wade through in order to return. You have to want it. Before it was given to you, now you have to prove yourself. And so I don't just look at the church as the church. The church is functioning as a greater part of what was prophesied would happen to us. And if it wasn't the church, it may have been asterism. And if it wasn't asterism, it would be, something else, Babylonian, it would be something else somewhere else, because it always is. So I think if we put it into that context and understand that each and everything that is represented in our lives in this return is part of the process, and we identify it for what it is, then we will be able to navigate our ways through and be able to parse through what is of the Creator and what is not. I like to look at the church as it played its part. I've said this before and I'll say it again. It played its part. Christianity played its part. And through, by and large, the efforts of many Christians, they brought back that which we turned our backs on. You know, they brought it back to us and brought to our remembrance. So even in our chastisement, we were given the book, so that when we woke up, we would understand that, aha, this looks familiar. And so, yeah, you know, that's kind of how I look at the doctrines. And it's only if we don't realize it, then we get trapped in it. But then once we understand the players in the game, then we begin to separate ourselves from the thing that no longer profits and move closer towards the Creator. So those are my thoughts. And thank you, Daphne, for saying that it sounds better. All right, I will just come back.
Feedback from the community letting us know that our little experiments are working. I see that we have callers on the line. That's great. I want you to stay with us a little bit longer while I get to our last two panelists this question, and then we'll open up the phone lines and take all of your questions and comments about this very, very important, very, very curious topic that we're having today. If you're just joining us and you're listening in and you have no idea what we're talking about or why we're experimenting, we're on our 9th episode. You are listening to Under the Palm, Hebrew Women Speak, and today's topic was given to us by Only Love Austin. The question on the table is the doctrines of demons, and one moment, please. Okay, and how harmful theology corrupts Hebrew character. So, without further ado, we'll go over to Only Love Austin. Go ahead and weigh in, please.
You would like me to land on the role of the church and some of the beliefs that we have?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's interesting because a lot of Hebrews will say, I love the church, or I'm not no Christian, but you and Amona touched on this a few months ago, but like the whole Jezebel spirit, that comes right from the Pentecostal church. Or I see a lot of Hebrews doing the whole, this whole like sovereignty paperwork, and that comes from like Christian, like supremacist groups, or even things like soul ties, and I'm not going to get into a debate about whether that's true or not, but that's also something that comes from the church. Most of the gender beliefs that I see a lot of Hebrews putting forth actually come from conservative Christianity, but I think people don't want to be honest about that. You know, and I don't even think sometimes people, if someone became a Hebrew and they weren't raised in the church, and maybe they follow particular teachers or camps, they may not even know when they're receiving recycled Christian doctrine. And, you know, it's one thing when you take certain Christian doctrines and you have a whole society that's majority Christian or Christian nonprofits to help, you know, families when they become poor. It's another thing when you try to take some of these dangerous doctrines and you don't have the system to support it, then it's even doubly a tragedy with how they actually play out in real life. And I think, like Amuna said, you know, even in God's grace while he was chastising us, the church did bring back at least the book. I'm not one to, you know, bash all aspects of the Christian church, but I think your personal relationship with Yah will begin to pull out those doctrines that are still lingering from the church that are harmful. You know, a lot of beliefs about women come right out of the Christian church. And, you know, it's just interesting that people hold on to those so tightly, but, you know, maybe they drop something like the holidays, which we should drop, but something that could be hurting the women around them, they keep. And so I think it's always a process of getting that idolatry out of your heart, the leaven. We're about to come on Pesach, the leaven out of your heart. We're so entrenched in this that we don't even know when we're still living it. I relinquish the mic.
Thank you so much for that. As you were speaking, it reminded me of the late 80s war on drugs. I'm so sure that none of the millennials will know what I'm talking about. But when you spoke about, we're looking at some doctrine that's straight out of the Christian playbook, and even receiving a lot of heat from Christians. Like when they talk about the misogyny that is in some of the doctrines that the camps might push, or in some of the conversations that individuals might push. There's an 80s commercial that where there's a young boy who's found messing with drugs, and the father comes to chastise him, and he says, "I learned it by watching you." And a lot of what we see the brothers getting heat for from the Christian evangelicals or these Christian apologetics, the answer could be returned to them that many of them got it from watching you. We got it from the pulpit. The brothers didn't make a lot of this up. A lot of the misogyny, a lot of the even some of the nationalism. This is a societal thing. This is something that they've seen before. They didn't invent it. Ashanti, what are your thoughts?
All right. I'm going to add another twist to it. Yes, the church definitely has played an impactful role on some of the attitude and doctrines that we see some of our Israelite brothers and sisters take on. Besides the misogyny towards the women, there is also pressure on the men. There are pressure on the men, and I will say this: the men. Oh, hold on. The
men are taught, of course, they have to be the sole providers of their family, meaning they have to be the one to go out and get the money, and got to be the only one to get the money. You have to have this certain type of job status about you even before you can get a wife. Now, I'm not saying, get a mediocre job. However, what the men are pressured from is if you're made out to be this not ready person, if you don't have a college degree, if you don't come to church every Sunday, if you don't if you don't pay your tithes, you're told you have to be this before you can even gain a wife. And the thing is, most of the pulpit preachers are not showing the men how to be. They're not giving classes. They're not giving seminars. They're not giving clinics. They're just beating you across the head with do this, do that, be this, be that. And they're telling the women, girl, because I hear the preachers, they love to mimic and mock. And they love to mimic and mock, women without putting the Tyler Perry suit on. Girl, if he ain't coming with the $20 job, $25 job, you don't need him. If he wearing jeans every day, you don't need him. If he ain't coming to church every week, you don't need him. And I know some women, I'm one of them, who met the craziest dudes in the church building. I met some of the craziest dudes in the church building. It's a free-for-all in the church because 70 to 80% of the members are women. So where these guys gonna go? It's a free club besides the gym, right? So a lot of these preachers, they're telling them you can't be no homosexual. I'm not down with homosexuality, but when you drilled in, and I'm gonna say it like this because this is how they say it in the pulpit. Y'all better not be out here being no sissies, punks, and faggots. That's what they say. And they preach that fire and brimstone emotionalism to the men a lot as well. I hear it. I've heard it. I was a person raised in the church, Baptist. You see what I'm saying? So they really beat you across the head with these things. And so a lot of the times the men, they probably have a decent paying wage job. They probably have an apartment. They probably have a nice car to get them to A to B, but they're afraid of going down to the county courthouse, county clerk recorder office. They're afraid of getting that paper because they've been stigmatized that they have to be this way before they have a wife. And a lot of our sisters are missing out on good men because the preachers in the pulpit then told them they have to meet a certain almost rich man's criteria before they take on a wife, and that they got to go to church every Sunday. You see what I'm saying? And like I said, I've met some of the craziest men in church. We got murderers in the church, drug dealers. We got pimps in the church. You got domestic abusers in the church. And I'm talking about people I know that I've came across. They don't train these men up. So that's what I want to say, because you see the men, the Israelite brothers, they come out and they're angry, they're bitter, they're hurt and upset. What are they upset at? They upset because they're not being showed how from the pulpit. None of these deacons, trustees, pastors and bishops are taking them aside and mentoring them, you know, not showing them how to get a job, not showing them how to invest and what to invest in. They're not being shown that. So our Israelite men, they take on that attitude. And let me say this verse real quick. Proverbs 3, verse 31. Do not envy a man of violence, or do not envy a man who's an oppressor, and choose none of his ways. Right? Choose none of his ways. So when you envy, right? When you envy or take on somebody's ways, right? Or take on the ways of or look at the ways of the oppressor, you kind of want that way for yourself. Without knowing you want that way for yourself, without knowing you taking it on. So that's what our Israelite brothers have taken on. They've taken on the attitude of the oppressors. They envy because the oppressors seem to have the control, the power. They seem to be able to be successful at guilt tripping, manipulating, getting the women, getting the money, getting the people to listen to you with all the charismatic talk. You see, so I say that's an angle too that comes from the church that our Israelite men are taking on. That's why they're angry, bitter, and upset. That's what I believe. Just one of the many reasons why they're upset and take on this way. And now they're militant with what they're trying to bring forth in this Israelite walk. And I'll yield from there.
Example of what you mean by that.
Is there anybody that wants to answer that question? I think all of you can answer. I'm going to start with, if I heard only love the clearest, I will start with only love, and we'll take that question one by one.
So I actually have some friends who are women ministers in a major Christian denomination, and they have to go under psychological eval to get ordained. And when me teaching, Baptist seminary inspired all the women professors, and that was in the media. So those are just a few examples of some of the misogyny in the church.
Thank you for that. Another would like to answer the question of the caller.
Well, this is Sister Ashanti. I believe this is Sister Doris, right, on the line. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian too. I'm a Christian too, Sister. Is that your name, Sister Doris? I'm a Christian too.
Respond after we answer the question we've already asked.
And Mayana, just for clarity, I'm not just saying misogyny only exists among Christians.
Correct.
The Hebrew community and the Muslim community.
Right.
Community. So it's not an attack on the church. I was just answering the question with examples. Okay, I just want to make that clear because
the point is that none of us said the church was the only one that said in these things. But the question is, she wants an example of what we mean when we say the church is complicit. And some of these ideas originated there. They didn't originate here. We didn't make them up. So these things that you were mentioning are examples, because she asked you for examples of what the church might be complicit in or involved in. And those would be examples. And now Ashanti was in the middle of answering her question. It sounds like this is Sister Doris, and whether she can confirm or deny that, but Ashanti, rather than trying to identify the caller, continue with your response to her question.
My response was going to be a question in that did Sister Only Love clarify the definition of misogyny for the call?
No, I didn't hear her give a definition. Do you want to give definition?
you want to do that?
Sure. I'll pull it up from online. It's dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against women. That's what the short definition is right there. I yield.
Okay, so this is Mayana. In response to what we're talking about, since you asked for clarity about what we are talking about, we're looking at some of the more injurious doctrines that are floating around Israel and looking at where they may have originated or where they came first. For example, Sister Only Love touched on the limitations and prohibitions about women contributing meaningfully to the discourse of what's happening in the scriptures. Now, the women being cited in the churches, we didn't make that up. Christianity had that already, silencing women. This emphasis on this Roman Greco mentality, that's a very Christian position. And so the brothers haven't made that up, rather imposing that on us. That's something they poured it from Christianity. We can find it there. If I were to give you a list of, and I could easily give you a list of books that are addressing the misogyny in the Christian church. They're not writing about misogyny in Israel. They're writing about this long-standing over the course of centuries in the Christian church. In fact, there's an entire school of thought called the hermeneutics of suspicion, and that the Christian feminists have picked up because there's this way in which the scriptures are being taught from the pulpit that necessarily limit the women. And there's this backlash because of that. So you have feminist theology. Feminist theology is not a response to Israelites. It's a response to Christianity. So when we're talking about that there is this pre-existing misogynistic theological perspective, then it's that. And that's what we're referring to. If you would like to send us an email and have a conversation with us, if you feel like there's a incorrect in some way, maybe you want to extend the conversation, we could open to having a round table with you about that. But prayerfully, we've answered your question as to what we mean when we say that there's a pre-existing, much older conversation coming out of the Christian sector about these misogynistic approaches and the way women are represented or misrepresented or completely omitted from Christian theology. Now you have more callers, right?
All right, let's go to the next call. Let's go to 347-303. You're live and air.
Shalom, this is Thaisha. Can you guys hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, this is the thing that we all don't understand, and I'm going to just speak to the sister who's a Christian, even in Israel. We don't understand that oppression takes many different forms. Christianity did like what the United States government has done. In the fact of, okay, in the beginning, it started off a certain way. And during the time we were chattel slavery, it was used as a control mechanism. There was sometimes when, like Sister Judith is saying, they allowed the women to go out into the wilderness, the clearing in the wilderness, and, you know, they knew we were gathering, and they may have allowed us to I don't know if that was during slavery or before, but I think I have seen in documentary what Sister Judith was talking about, where the women preached and about loving yourself and all of that. I think even there was a clip from that in the movie Beloved. Now, then, there were times where we see where the only time we could gather is on Sundays in church. And that was given an alternative to working on the plantation. And they had to be a white person in the back to make sure we weren't preaching anything from the scriptures that could be, I guess, considered controversial or elevated to us. So a lot of things from the New Testament was preached and misconstrued as to slave love your masters and things of that nature, and maybe not even explained properly. So to keep the people docile, the United States government did the same thing. They created a situation where they saw blacks that were independent and had their own businesses during the Reconstruction. They blocked us out from doing it. So now, you know, they created an oppressive situation under Jim Crow because they saw after we left slavery during the Reconstruction, we actually had billionaires. We did very well financially on our own with, you know, the Black Wall Street and all that stuff. Those of us who are familiar with that part of history. So if you oppress us, they can like kind of control our finances, which is independence. And the thing about it is that once they had us, you know, a lot of us went north because we were escaping lynchings and stuff like that under Jim Crow. They put us in these ghettos, and at first we had jobs in factories and things of that nature. Then the factories were shut down, and you know, a lot of people had to go to welfare, and they created this welfare state, not just with blacks, but with other races too. And then now, after, you know, you got a few generations of welfare and you have made the people financially dependent on social services, and I'm not saying everyone, some people didn't fall for it, but some people got trapped in it. Then you remove the male from the household, and then afterwards you come with a welfare reform decades later. Oh, get up, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. When you took away the boost in the first place. Christianity does like the United States government does. They will start an oppressive situation, and then they put a few black women to preach. Then it's, oh, we let our women preach. We let this, we're not oppressing you, not like Israel. And the sad thing about Israelites is that, like someone said earlier, we're still holding on to the negativities of some of the things we learned. So now the men don't want to be oppressed. They don't want to be like Sister Shanti said, that one that, you know, the preachers talking about. So they come into Israel and they put all the financial constraints on the woman while they go out there and preach the gospel. When Yah didn't say that. Abraham worked, Jacob worked, everybody worked for their wives. You don't have to be a billionaire to have a wife, but if you put in that work, and even if that sister has to work and you work together, these are the things that make for a strong marriage. Supporting each other in love, in intimacy, and things like that. But a lot of times we are so out of the scope of loving one another and liking ourselves, but to somebody else, that that's where the issues lie. I want everybody on the line to watch a documentary called Concerning Violence. I watched that. It was narrated by Lauren Hill when they talked about when the Europeans went into Mozambique and other parts of Africa, and they were
they were shooting down the cows so that the people didn't have a way to farm. And one thing I learned from that documentary, those things are an act of violence. Someone doesn't have to hit you or slap you or kill you to be an act of violence. When they take away your financial ability, it's an act of violence. When they take the man out of the home, it's an act of violence because you don't have protection. Besides Yah, of course, Yah is our protection. When they attack our children, this is an act of violence. When they give us substandard schools, these are acts of violence. And we don't realize that we are people under the attack. And only love is correct in what she's saying with missions. Because I know my parents, who were from Guyana, South America, my father's family were Anglican, which is the Episcopalian Church. Even though they stayed in their lane when it came to our history and things of that nature, it wasn't as bad as some of the churches that imposed this Euro doctrine. Even though they did it in a mild way. And my grandparents were very militant, even though they were Episcopalian. It's still an underlying thing of Eurocentric, England rule domination. And those of us who have parents that were colonialists like myself, that's a part of the problem. So the seed is still planted, whether it be aggressively planted or planted in a subliminal way. And that's all I have to say. I know it was a mouthful. Shalom.
Hallelujah. So Society Super calling here. We appreciate you. We have one more caller, but before we open up the phone line again, I want to make something clear for the listening audience joining us now and me joining us on the replay. We are not saying that Christianity is the only institution that has oppressive theology. We are doing comparative. Correct. And we're tracing back origins to what you might be seeing taught in Israel. Correct. Now in our communities. And we are looking at, because very often, primarily, what Israelites would like to say is that we are Hebrew, meaning that we have crossed over, we have changed, we are different from our worldly or our past selves. Mm-hmm. And very often our past selves include our participation in the church. But if we have brought with us doctrine that we learned while sitting in the pews, that we have adopted from the pulpit, then have we really crossed over? And we're not going to shy away from turning the lens back onto the Christian community to say, some of these things you're saying you don't like seeing in us, it's simply being a reflection of what they learned in church. And you can go through the archives and you'll find conversations about, as I think it was one of our sisters brought up, we talked previously about the Jezebel spirit. Yep. Israelites didn't make that up.
That's right.
We have had Ashanti and Sister Only Love and myself and Sister Imuna and our emails. We all talked about the influences of the Roman Greco mentality that gets kind of encapsulated in some of the New Testament theology and then regurgitated against the women.
Thank you, Maya.
We don't speak when the men speak.
Thank you, Maya.
Have conversations about the scriptures at all. This idea about the woman being beneath the man, and that you don't even have access to the Creator, and you're going through a man. These are not things the Israelites made up. That's a perversion of certain letters in the New Testament.
Man,
they have learned from church.
Man.
And now some of our Israelites, as Sean said, this idea of being Christian is not unique to the church. There are many Messianics who self-identify as Christian. So if you were to sit them down, dollar for dollar, some of the brothers who identify as Messianics will not disagree with the men who would be at churches.
Exactly.
Because of the ideology, the ideology is the same. It is the same. And so we're showing those types of connections. We have another call. I don't want to go on the pulpit myself. But I would like to go on to that caller. I just want to give you some clarity portion of the show.
Great clarity. Great clarity.
Patient.
Great clarity. Hallelujah.
Excuse me. Hi. Well, my name is Francis, and first let me just say I'm kind of like in an outside location right now, so you're gonna hear like planes flying over and stuff like that. First, I don't know. I've been hearing a lot of stuff, but if there's any question for me, or any not question, any topic that as Israelites there would be anyone who would want some clarity on, then that would be good. I could devote some information.
Okay.
But right now, there's a lot going on, and I listened to like 10 minutes of the conversation. I was just like to summarize by saying that there's a verse in scripture that says the battle is not against flesh, but spiritual principalities that hide in low places.
Correct. Yeah.
So, that would be ideology, doctrine.
Yeah. Dogma.
Types of mental faculties or ideas or ideals that are what is that word, formulated by the mind or the intent of men.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing one thing that's going to be pivotal is going to be the discernment ability.
Yes.
The woman is going to be integral. She's going to be like very integral because of her ability to capacitate and exhibit compassion.
Yep.
Higher principles of like mercy and those things. Those are things that are going to be essential to the progression of Israel, because the nations, they come from a more barbaric nature, but Israel has exhibited or mimicked them. They have exhibited behaviors as such. But I'm gonna try to get a platform where I can put out as much information as possible. But
this guy talking, man. This guy talking. He got some sense.
Right now, anyway, so the woman's going to be essential. She's going to be essential, and Israel has exhibited this and that. And what was the other thing I was trying to mention? So if anyone had any type of concern or of any type, I thought my phone was muted for a second. Hello?
We can still hear you.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, there's so much. I got a lot of comprehensive plans on how the people are going to be able to move forward with, becoming more self-reliant and self-sufficient and getting rid of some of the old ideals, the identity deficits, and coming up to speed with what's actually been going on in that spirit realm, and some of the agendas and the plans of the enemy to try to thwart, the upward progression of God's people. I got some notes here. Like so is there any type of
where'd he go?
Yeah, that call actually dropped. When you get a chance, call back in, brother. Call back in. You got man, nobody else standing by. That
Oh, they like the sound effects.
Yes, I'm here. So we've been talking so far about all of the doctrines or the more injurious doctrines that are floating around the Hebrew Israelite community. And so I want to give the people a little rundown of the top 20. I'll do it quickly. Number one, there's an unwillingness to use responsible secular scholarship, or be a responsible scholarship when it comes to secular materials. Number two was there are some that have doctrines against the use of modern medicine. There is this idea that we should not
be permissive of meat eating. That's a doctrine that was listed among the as injurious. I remember this. Lady Muna was helping to moderate that thread, and she was great, and she was asking, okay, so this is the most injurious thing going on. So we have, because we had comments like, people are eating meat, undermining and denying women's direct access to the Creator. This idea that women cannot speak to the Most High, that she has to go through the masculine principle, otherwise, she doesn't have the ability or the permission to do so directly. Number 5, an inaccurate discussion or implementation of polygyny. That was huge on the thread. This conversation about polygyny is considered injurious by a number of people, not just women. There was maybe 1 or 2 brothers that talk about it. The caller was talking, and one of the things that he said was that the women were going to be, or need to be, or are integral in the forward movement of the nation. And I think that's important to highlight, that there are masculine voices in the Hebrew community that acknowledge their women. We have Rabbi Akweti, who does that also. I know a lot of brothers personally that value the women. In fact, we would have to say this Val is one who is open-minded and receptive to that fact, because every Monday night you'll hear the platform dedicated to the voices and discussions that are led or include women. You have Under the Palm, which is the show that you're listening to now, and next Monday you will be hearing the Relationship Challenge, which is hosted by Imuni Israel. And on that particular platform, she invites the brothers to sit down at the table, and we have real-time conversations about real topics. And we have men that come through all of the time, perfectly willing to have conversations with their sisters. You heard earlier from our brother B.A., who has a Wednesday segment on Debate Talk for You called Man Up. And essentially he is asking the men to come through and to have a conversation and to have some introspection, to take some accountability along with all of that authority that is being requested. So we're not having this show, once again, it's not a show to say all of the men hate us and all of the brothers that are doing all of these things, and these doctrines of demons are the only things on the table. Neither are we saying that the church is wholly wicked and wholly oppressive, but we are going to be, I think one of us to say, honest about the fact that these things exist. It exists in the church. It exists in the community. It's coming from the camps. We're having these things, and we're having these conversations because these things are real. So we'll continue. There is that issue of polygyny, the exclusion of women as positive participants and recipients of or in biblical matters, that's misogyny, exclusion of other nations as positive participants or recipients of biblical matters, which is xenophobia. There's always the ever-present Old Testament, New Testament infighting, which I would agree is very injurious, because there's been a lot of time arguing about that, denying or arguing against the identity of Esau, whoever that might be, whether or not it's the European American or someone else. The idea that concubinage is an honorable status. The Shabbat day, there are many, many ideas about when our Shabbat rest is supposed to occur. These different arguments about times and seasons. There are those that find that very injurious. The inclusion or hybridity of foreign doctrine. We were looking at this idea of there being a Muslim Hebrew, the other kinds of hybrid Hebrews. This hybridity of identity is considered injurious to our community by some. Obviously, the rape doctrine that I would say that most of us have come against. This is very much an anathema in the community. Anyone that would support this would get a great deal of backlash from most of the people in our community. But unfortunately, this rape doctrine persists due to horrible biblical scholarship. The flea doctrine, the 12 tribes chart. Many of you know what that is. If you don't, then have that conversation in the comment box. We'll definitely let you know what that is. But there's a great deal of controversy about the implementation of this tool, the 5 tribe chart, denying the Hebrew identity of the people on the continent of Africa. Our sister Only Love has done very forward-thinking, very progressive work in that area. You probably have heard her speak on it on our platform. We actually have a segment where she was able to go into that more thoroughly. We put the link back to that conversation so that you can listen in. Willingness to dissolve exogamous family. So exogamy is an anthropological term that means marrying outsiders or outside of your own people group. And so the willingness to dissolve mixed marriage is what we call that. That was actually a bit surprising to me to see how many people would even suggest that so flippantly, like without any real thought about overreaching consequences. But there are those, so then that was very interesting because it involves families, it involves wives and husbands and children in the future. So that's one of the things. The last 3 are the poverty doctrine, the idea that, which I guess would be our answer to the, what is that called again? Oh, it just escaped me. Prosperity. The prosperity doctrine that you might hear in the churches, melanated people, and so obviously the Hebrew community as well, seem to think that there's something magnanimous or something more righteous about being broke. You know, I guess because, there's this idea, this theology that there's a tenderness or a preference for the poor by the Most High. Finally, the last 2, that there is Israel only, that all you have to do is be Israelite, and that is sufficient to be in the kingdom, and that we don't have a lot to do. It's kind of we are the bride, but we don't need to be the bridezilla kind of approach to this. And finally, don't ask questions. That the people believe that not being able to question their leadership is one of the more or most injurious doctrines. And that's the end of the top 20 questions. I have another caller on the line, so I'm going to go to that caller, and then we're going to go into round 3 because we're coming upon the 10 o'clock hour now. So do we have time? Are we going to still be on the air after the 10 o'clock hour?
Yes, thanks to the people that donated to the plan. We do have extra time, another hour left on the air. So we appreciate the family that donate. But let's go to the next caller. Let's go to, I think it's a Skype caller. Live there. Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for calling. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Shalom, shalom. How y'all doing?
We're doing well.
Beautiful. It's a lot. Like, oh man. First off, I want to tell Mayana, excellent job. This is an excellent platform. The first thing I guess I should say is, for me, it's great listening to this because, like, as an Israelite who, like, my mom is not alive, right? So I don't have my mother, I don't have my grandmother. So to listen in sometimes, and like to hear the females when they call in, and hear the women just kind of interacting, it's good. It does you so good just to hear the interaction and some of the wisdom from the feminine perspectives, because we get a lot of masculine perspective in our community. So just to give you sisters a round of applause, like, keep it up. It's excellent, and it kind of treated like Novocaine. It works slow. Just keep going, keep nurturing the community. We need it, right? We've had so much masculine energy that we need this. We need this injected. This is part of healing. And so just to speak on some of the things, I don't want to go too deep because we could go really deep into this. There's just a lot of trauma that has happened in our community. And so in order for us to heal, we have to explore all of this stuff. And so while it may seem monotonous, like his mom turned out a huge list of things, it may seem like it's very long. We need to address all of these things. And just to make it clear, I'm an Israelite who does, I guess, claim to be a Christian and profess to be a Christian from the perspective of I believe in the New Testament, but I believe that it's been extremely distorted and pushed out there from a masculine perspective, just to dominate women as well as dominate other weak women, right? One of the main reasons I left being a minister 10 years ago in the church was because at the time I was married, and there were certain things I didn't want to subject my wife to. And men would tell me, oh, you don't let your wife run your house. And I actually had to let these brothers know my wife ain't running the house. And if we really need to move some furniture, we can move some furniture, right? And that's back in my boss. But it's sad that you would have to go there with people who proclaim to be followers of the Most High. So, one thing is just keep doing the work, keep pressing, and it will work. Second is just if there are brothers out there who feel like they need to continue to be so macho and explode and do this bravado, you're doing the community a disservice. The last brother that called in, our women are integral in what we're doing. If we are to become a nation like we're trying to become, are we just going to exclude the women? We're going to put them in the kitchen? I mean, I come from a family of strong women. They're not going to have that. Yeah, my mother, God bless the dead, if she was here, she's not having that. You're not putting my mom in the corner, right? So I love what you guys are doing. So don't feel like it's falling on deaf ears. It's just continue to push. There's a lot that's going on. But the blessing is, just from watching from the outside perspective, it seems like every week we're getting stronger. Maybe small in little areas, little pockets, but we're getting stronger. And people are waking up. And some of these things are starting to seem more and more just idiotic. Not to talk about the 12 tribes chart, but that just seems to be something that we can all agree on. It seems to be, I don't want to use a different word, but it's not something that is intellectual enough. I think the first thing Myron talked about was just scholarship, like having good scholarship. The right doctrine, that's just ridiculous. We shouldn't even have to talk about this, but what we do need, and my main point, and this is anonymous people, by the way, shout out to Brother B.A. The main point is we do need more men that aren't afraid to step up. We claim to be these tough men, these tough guys. Step up and support our sisters, right? I'm asking for y'all to step up and support these sisters. They're doing a great job. And get out of some of this ignorance. This is just pure ignorance. If you're going to oppress a woman, right, and continue to tell them they should learn in silence, which, by the way, if you do proper word studies in the Greek, these words don't even mean quiet. There's proper words for just quiet, shut your mouth in Greek. Some of these words actually just mean be tranquil, peaceful, right? That's all they're talking about. And then he also says the same thing to men. And the one thing that people want to throw out is what Paul said, he doesn't allow women to teach, or he doesn't allow them to speak, or whatever it was. He was speaking about this stuff. And so we have to learn to kind of weigh and explore this stuff and really dig into it for what it is. So just finally, I'll just repeat it. Keep doing what y'all doing. I just wanted to just encourage y'all. Like, keep doing what you're doing, because it's working. It's just working slow. So just keep it up. Great job, Style. Keep providing a voice for these women. And I appreciate you. So, shalom.
Shalom. Put up for that. Do me a favor. Drop me a line in my inbox. I wanted to talk to you off air. Okay?
Okay, I'll get at you soon.
All right, I appreciate that. I'm going to turn the conversation back over to the panel, beginning with Imuna and then with Ima Yehudi, who has been very patiently listening to all of us. But before I do, I want to acknowledge the brothers that have called in and shown this level of support, showing this level of interest and encouragement. And I can see that it's a very important conversation, because we have callers that are calling in, weighing in. We have on both sides of the fences. Christians are saying, I need a little clarity on the direction that you're going in. Brothers that are calling to say, listen,
some of us still have your back, and we understand that the doctrine is causing damage, and not all of us are going to sign up for it. We have two more callers on the line. I do want to hear at least one more of them. I'll take the first one, because obviously our callers are why we do it. I talk to the sisters all the time, but we do want to have that out there. The other thing this caller brought up, which resonated, because the caller before him said something similar, the idea of the women being integral, and the previous caller said that the women have the seat of compassion. And both Only Love and I were going to speak to, I spoke to the women because Only Love wasn't able to make it, about the womb and the connection between the womb and compassion. That this is something that even the Hebrew language understands, that women have a unique association, have a unique connection with compassion. It's associated with the part of the body that is the womb, that is uniquely the portion of the woman. It's not something that is given to all of humanity, and women have a very different experience with connecting with other people. And so the womb having that meaning also in our language, in the Hebrew, is significant. And this idea of a higher kindness, the chesed, the mercy, that is also associated with women. This chesed. My own daughter is actually named Chesadia. This idea of higher kindness, mercy, chesed. So there's the word rechem, or racham, depending upon context, which is a word used for the womb connected to compassion, and there is chesed, which is higher kindness or mercy. So we have two callers that I'm aware of. We'll start with the first caller, and then I'll slide it over to Imuna and Ima, and then if Only Love and Ashanti would like to let the second caller come in, we'll see how that works out. Caller, what are your thoughts? Thank you for being patient and holding.
Yeah, 443, you on the line? Go there. 443-722.
Shalom. Hello. Welcome to the conversation.
Hi, this is Queen from Baltimore. I wanted to discuss, to give an example of misogyny that's used with the scripture, if I can. It'll be quick, and I'm going to give you some scriptures also. And this is also not to make an excuse for women to go out and act like how some men are acting. But they are saying, with regards to Leviticus 28:20-10, the law says that man should not commit adultery with another man's wife, and also that verse vice versa. And when I read the Bible, when it says man, I'm looking at it that it means family, the family unit, man, woman, and child. So, but brothers are saying that if a married man lays down with a single woman, he has not committed adultery. Even if he doesn't want to be that sister's covering or take on responsibility for her well-being, it's not adultery, i.e. means no guilt. So this is what I'm getting, that's how they're thinking. They don't want any guilt when they lay down with a single sister. So if they put it on the sister that if she's married and she lays down with a single man that's not married, let's say somebody young, or even somebody out of a relationship that's no longer married, she has committed adultery. And I think that's why so many people, especially women, love that New Testament over there in John 7:53, John 8-11, where JC had stopped the stoning of a woman, because it said that, because at verse 5 says, now in the law Moses commanded us to stone women, but when JC came in to block it, that's why a lot of women still, I think, like that New Testament, and so that's what I'm getting also with this example of misogyny. 2 Samuel 12:11-12 says, I will raise up evil against your household, take your wives and give them to your companions. Now, I'm guessing since Leviticus says 2010, man has to be married, that companion must have a wife. So when you read those scriptures like that, it's the adultery is when two married people are not married to each other, lay down. That's what they're committing, is adultery. And so with the brothers who believe that, then they should believe, if they want us to believe that if a married woman lays with a single man, she still commits adultery, then they need to go by Proverbs 6:32-34, where it says, one who commits adultery with a woman is lacking sense. So it doesn't say married woman, it just says woman. So that's not my point. I hope y'all get what I'm saying. So that, shalom.
Yep. Shalom. So you brought a little fire to the conversation. I know we can have a whole episode on why adultery follows the status of the woman, why it's felt that way. I think that it was very interesting that you went into the New Testament and you brought out certain points, specifically the one where the Messiah of the New Testament is faced with adjudicating the innocence or guilt of the woman accused of adultery. The idea that he comes in and blocks something that could legally occur is a bit muddy, because the Torah would have not allowed it. It wasn't something that he did out of his amazing grace or martyrdom. The law says that you must bring them both in order for stoning to happen. That's our law. Our Torah law says you can't stone one and not stone the other. If a woman is accused of or thought to have committed this adultery, her husband has not caught her, cannot prove it. We have, what is that, number 5 is the law of jealousy. A whole different set of adjudication goes into effect. He cannot have her stoned because he has a suspicion. They have to be caught together and they must both be stoned. So the New Testament, or the Messiah of the New Testament, did not create anything when he didn't allow for the stoning to occur. So that's one of many misconceptions about this idea of adultery, or how it gets played out and who gets punished and why. And like I said, that could be a whole different show. But I really appreciate that you brought that up, because there is this kind of, what about me? If the man can do this, why can't the woman do? And why is it that the man can, why is it considered adultery in one case and not in the other? And there's a lot of that causes some division, because there isn't any well thought out scholarship about it. There's a lot of pointing to one another's genitals. Because my genitals say so, and well, my genitals don't agree with that. And so it's not about the male and female, it's a way of looking at the law and why the law does these things. And Moon and I like to say that the law is practical. So instead of speaking for Moon, I'll bring Moon into the conversation. I know I have another caller holding. I'll ask for that person's patience just a little while longer while I weigh in with Sister Amuna and Ima Yahudi, who have been patiently waiting to speak now that we have actually passed the 10 o'clock hour. Amuna, what are your thoughts?
In general, it's the conversation is unfolding. I thank the elders calling in. I thank the brothers for calling in and lending their support. Sometimes you need to hear that your words are being heard. It's kind of like the one who comes back and says thank you, because we are doing something that could be overlooked. Raising our voices and having discussions and going into spaces that before were hushed and covered over. And we spoke about doctrinal issues last week. We're speaking about them again because this is at the core of the issue. When we talk about them, I think oftentimes they're not new, as we spoke about earlier. They're coming out of other religious spaces and other denominations that, in the hands of men, that's how doctrines develop, right? And so I would say that even in this return, the prayer for me is that we are actually understanding what we're looking at. I think a lot of these doctrines are like when you go to school and you need to know just how much I need to pass, right? You know what I mean? You're wasting your parents' money, you're wasting your time. I just want to know how I pass. Can I skate through? And that's kind of how we're approaching the text. This is how we're approaching the law. We don't really understand it. And so a lot of these doctrines is birthed out of, well, how can I just be me and just get by? You know what I mean? And so that's not going to cut it, because the only person we're really cheating is ourselves, because we think that we're still carrying over a lot of Christianity. You know, we're still carrying over, I want to be saved in another space, not understanding that the things that you're supposed to be doing is for your betterment now. That's another doctrine. I'm not sure if it made the list, and it may be a bit controversial. The reason you're supposed to be applying these things, because the Creator put it within it. These are the benefits now. If you do these things will happen. It's not somewhere far off where you have to go to sleep and wake up to see if you're going to actualize them. These are universal laws and principles that govern creation. And because we, to a large degree, as a community, still don't understand that, we approach it as though it's foreign. And then you have other people in other denominations and other places, they take bits and pieces of these universal laws and principles and exploit them. And then we say, well, that's foreign. It's not foreign. Sow and reap is what it is. It's a universal law. Whatever you put there, we're going to get back. And I would say that the doctrines, the people who are teaching them, is because oftentimes they don't even understand. And they haven't seen the benefit of what it is that they're reading. And so they're inclined towards evil, as the scripture says. And so, hopefully we in all we're getting, as the Proverbs say, get understanding. Wisdom is principle, therefore get wisdom. But with all you get understanding. Understand what you're looking at. It's nothing to try to, trim down and make it to fit you and tailor it so that it makes you comfortable. It's for your growth, it's for your edification, it's for your healing, it's for your betterment, it's for your functioning as a community. The elder brought up adultery. There's a whole lot of things that comes with that. There's a breakdown in your communal structure when you transgress these boundaries. That's what it is. It's boundaries, it's laws to show you how to operate. But if you think it's oppressive, and if you think it's holding you back, or if you follow the example to a certain degree that our forefathers left on record, they're showing you in almost 90+% of the situations, the Torah is telling you what not to do, because human nature is going to lean towards the way of what not to do. So we see our ancestors doing what you're not supposed to do. So you don't say, well, you got to see, I'm going to study your notes and get exactly what you got. You know what I mean? You say, okay, this is where you fell. Let me look at what the law is and see if I can get in front of this. Let me see if I can do the work so that this won't be my case. Let me see if I can cut this off at the path. And this is why, in my estimation, most saints said it's not hard to say who shall go over across to get it from you, or who shall go up into the sky. But it's very nigh unto you. But it's work, because of all things, and I will leave it at this, we're talking about the government of self. This is what it boils down to. And if you don't have self-government, you're going to have people, male, female, and whoever else who's going to come up with some type of oppressive doctrine to govern you. I relinquish the mic, Sister Man.
Thank you for that. That's why I brought you live from the Holy Israel. Even the army, are you proud of your daughters? I'm sorry. I'm not even the army in the green. I'm feeling prayerful for her right now. But even Yehudi, you proud of your daughters? What are your thoughts? I'm telling you. You know? You said just about what I was going to say, and that is so true. You've been here before, okay? And I'm just on the line. I'm just tapping all this in. See, I'm going to say this. The reason why I brought up a little history of the church, Because that time period, when our ancestors, some of them already here, some of them are on the ship, we carried on the genetic makeup of the Most High. Our ways, our gestures of the Creator. We're the only group, let's say only culture in the world, and I have not yet, I'm wrong, have learned any other cultures in status. We cannot find our heritage through other people. Not to say it's right or wrong, just throwing it out there. We can talk to many people and they can say, I've come from England, or Baghdad, Australia, Nairobi, on, etc. If we say Israel, we're laughed at. Who are you? But if you look at our history and look at our accomplishments, and then those accomplishments were torn down. Look at Greensboro, Wall Street. And there's people who ought to be railed. That's just one of them. And a few I can't think right off. They started this movement. Some of them were Israel. It's the study. It's the unit. Someone asked me the other day, what is the universal law? I said, knowing good and evil. That's what all nations. When we were the ones that were chosen, it's not about us, though, but to represent the Creator and make of all things, everything, to show that example. Until we recognize who we are as a people and walk in some humility, we're going to have these subjects, okay, we're going to have these topics, but we have to change. He is Messianic or not. Because I go by this, and I think Manana knows, this well-known anthropologist, Dr. Sertimo, who said religion brings the best, to bring the best out of a person or the worst. Mm-hmm. But we should look at the best. I've experienced, as they call good Christians, good movies, whatever a Buddhist, I have it all in my family. But we always find something we can agree upon. That's how I roll in these days, how I get along with people. I don't have to, people I know believe in Jesus or I'm a Shia. I don't have a problem with it. It doesn't bother me. I used to believe in the same thing. There's too much going on around us. We're not arguing, we're discussing, it's great. But it's too much going on. We got work to do. We got to let people know. And that's what's important. We have to let people know who we are. We're not acknowledged by the nation. It's the Most High acknowledged. And that's greater. And I even go through the New Testament because I don't care, some good things in there. He picked the low-born to make the bonds, and I'm paraphrasing, I think it's in Corinthians, for his choice. Not the high-born, not the people that got degrees. And this, I'm not knocking degrees, don't get me wrong. But this is a long walk. Sometimes it's a lonely walk. But we have to rely on Him and not worry about the rest. It's not easy, but it can be done. So with that, ladies, sisters, I love you. Continue with your work. I'm so proud of you because I'm listening to what you're experiencing in this time and this age. And the divide always comes with older and younger, and it should not be, because I give you the things what I know of back in the day. And you're giving me things that's going on now, so I have to keep up. See, I did that with my mom. She's like, I remember when our telephone was only $10. I probably go, what, $10 a month for a phone? For the service? And sometimes we need to lessen the old in order to improve the present and make the future better. So, thank you so much for that. I'm going to go ahead and move this over to Only Love. Only Love, thank you so much for putting this topic on the table. As you can see, we've gotten a lot of great feedback. What are your thoughts on how the conversation is going and all of the things that you've heard so far? So I definitely appreciated the elders weighing in and the brothers. And I really like what Amuna said about, you know, what the scripture prescribes is meant to be practiced now and to better our life now, because one of the holdovers from many different religions, including Christianity, is that, you know, you're only following scripture for the afterlife. And I do believe that there are universal principles that sometimes, you know, many people are using, but Israel isn't using. Mayana, I wanted to just lift up one of the damaging doctrines, if that's okay. Yes, go ahead. Okay, I didn't want to overjump, but one of the doctrines that inspired this episode, and Sal, just mute me if I say something wrong, so I'm trying to find the right way to say this, and maybe it's time for kids to not listen to this part. But one of the doctrines that Mayana and I saw on Facebook was this doctrine that women cannot have testimonies because we don't have testicles. And I'm someone that loves the scripture from Revelation, where it says, by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony. I love sharing my testimony, and that really threw me back, not just because it was one random person saying it on Facebook, but the fact that there were others who agreed with them. And if some of you have watched the documentary Tarnished Awakening by Watchman and Deborah on YouTube, they show a clip where a brother is saying Moses' staff is a man's private part. And he's going into a whole sermon about this. And I know that these are the extremes, but it's interesting to me how one of the things Israel fell into was, you know, worshiping other Near East deities that had to do with almost sex cults and, you know, phallus worship. And that was one of the things that got us put out of the land. It wasn't just praying to other deities, but these other deities, you know, wanted sexual acts as a part of their worship. And Yah said, you know, do not worship me the way you worship other deities. And so some of us these things may sound funny, or may, you know, almost to some people sound like it makes sense, but we don't know that it's also coming from, you know, some of the doctrines that got our ancestors caught up in the past. And it's not something that should be taken lightly when this type of vulgarity is partnered with the scriptures that were handed down from our people. And I'm very concerned that a lot of sisters come into the truth thinking they can't communicate with Yah directly, so they have to, you know, find a man to be their covering or their husband, so they can have almost like the Catholic priest is mediating between his members and Yah. They're looking at a husband like that, and then they get taken along with some of these really perverted doctrines. So I hope I didn't say anything that was too risque for debate talk for you. I want to respect the platform. I'm really concerned about some of the doctrines that are coming up now among Hebrews. But when you look in our history, those are the doctrines that got us put out of the land. When we did know our culture, we knew our tribe, we had the temple, we were in the land, and we lost it all. And I'm concerned that in this awakening, we have rogue teachers who haven't sat under anyone to learn.
Agreed, absolutely. You're right. We have a lot of people who are confusing what is historically situated with what is Torah sanctioned. You did a little bit of a spoiler alert, but I was cool with that. Our final round will go into that. I want Ashanti to weigh in so we can bring the caller in. I'll give you another poll, and we'll close out with our last question and our final thoughts. Ashanti, what do you have for us?
I got a lot, but I'll try to keep it brief. I just want to say much love to the brothers who called in and are in the Hebrew. Much love. You agreed with him and then gave some points about Rabbi Quete talking about how the women were going to be playing an integral role, and the brother Francis, I believe, who called it earlier. He was the one who initiated that thought. So yes, I want to add something to what Anonymous Hebrew and Sister Imuna brought out, and this is what I tell people when I'm asked to inform, especially during our Sabbath services and with some of my individual projects I have going on my YouTube channel. I encourage people that it's beneficial to know that you are in the age of information. You have access to the World Wide Web. We have these smartphones, we have laptops, tablets. We have access to this information, and it's ready accessible. And one great thing that the church has taught, I will say this because I look at the good in everything. One great thing that the church has taught that I try to make sure they are holding themselves accountable for is they told us this is a personal relationship with the Creator, and they told us that we're going to have to give an account by ourselves on Judgment Day, meaning nobody else is going to be around. Mama, daddy, sister, brother, moray, bishop, under the palm, man up, none of these people are going to be around to hold our hand. We're not going to be able to say, my moray said. We're not going to be able to say, the Hebrews said. We're not going to be able to say any of that. Right? And this means that they told us we have a direct line to the Father. We have a direct line to the Most High Yahweh, the Creator. Right? So, I say this, if you have a direct line, and you say you're a child of the Most High, that means you're supposed to be going directly to the guideline book that the parent laid out for you, right? Because if the parent wants you to be obedient to him, guess what? They're going to lay out the basics for you, and that's what the Most High has done in this word. So I encourage everybody, go into these scriptures and passages for yourself. Go into them for yourself. Because there's answers to plenty of these doctrines here. We know there's some crazy doctrines because we can go directly into a word. I like to do word studies. I like to show people, hey, much more than a strong concordance, get you some dictionary lexicons, but also talk to people who speak the language, study the language. And one of the things that anonymous people pointed out is, the women teaching, things of that nature. But to go back to what Rabbi Quinte brought out, I've been looking at these things in a simple word study, right? The word translated pastor in the KJV. Don't you know that word? That word is shepherd, right? The word is shepherd. And do you know, ra'ah, right? Original ra'ah. Do you know that word was also used for Rachel? In Genesis chapter 29, when it says she was a shepherdess. So the word translated pastor, right? Men think they can only hold the title of pastor because it's translated as such. But if you go back to the original Hebrew word, it's the same word. Ra'ah, shepherd and shepherdess, right? We gotta go back to ourselves and catch these things. I also did a word study. When anonymous people said, you don't let your woman run your house. Guess what? I'm gonna tell y'all something. Ashanti runs the feminine principle of her house. And you know why? You know why? Because that's what we're supposed to do. If we go back and have a little better, as they have done, right? And even in the Greek, 1 Timothy 5. There's a passage talking about telling the women to teach the younger women to manage their household. You know what that word actually means? It means to rule a household. It means to be the master of the house. This is what happens when I did not listen to no man.
I'm talking about human beings, a male or female, and go to the Spirit myself. Because the Holy Spirit is the teacher. The Spirit of the Most High Yahweh is the teacher. And when I can read, my ancestors died so I can read. Yeah. So I'm going to read. I'm going to take advantage here to read. I'm going to educate myself so I can do my feminine role the way the Father created me to be. You see what I'm saying? So, the thing that I'm going to say is awesome because I tell people, okay, yeah, you think you're going to be in the new kingdom? Okay, but does the Father anywhere say you got to sit here and suffer and just wait, be under a curse, and then wait to have something good? Right? In Luke 17, because I tell people that I'm a follower of the Messiah. Me being a follower of the Messiah means I lineage. Whatever I see him do, hear him do, I try to do. That's why I'll call myself a Christian to other Christians. I'm a follower of the Messiah. The Messiah said in Luke 17, he said, look, the kingdom of heaven is in your midst. It's not far off that you got to go to the heavens. It's not in the sea that you got to go overseas. It's not deep down below, so you got to go get it. It's here. It's here. And the reason why we have these doctrines, and the reason why we're grabbing a hold to them, is because we need to be willing, like the Lord said, to do the work. The work is not hard. In Deuteronomy 30, the Father said this is not burdensome. And the Messiah repeated, he said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You see what the parallels are? Ask yourself. Y'all got mothers and fathers. Did your mother and father, when you were living in their house, ask you to do a chore that they did not give you the capability of doing? And if they told you to do it, wasn't it for your own good? Thank you. So, learn the practicality. That's the practicality of the Father. If the Father's giving you something to do, he's not going to tell you or ask you or request something for you to do if he does not give you the capability to do it. Because that's love. Right? And that's what we start holding on to these doctrines. People can tell me anything. I know if they right or wrong off the bat. If you know if I know they're wrong, I just shut my ears off or either exit stage left. People want to argue with me who haven't read this scripture or passage completely. I ask them that first of all. Have you read it for yourself completely, or did you go to Reverend such and such, Moray such and such, and get it, and then come back to me? Because I'm not having that conversation. You can't talk about something you don't really know about. So I know I went on a long thing here, but get these references, get you an encyclopedia, get you these resources and material tools. You go out and you make your own money, you go out and you get your own revenue, you got access to Amazon, you got access to Barnes and Noble. You see what I'm saying? You have this access. Personal relationship. Remember, on Judgment Day, like we all know, right? We're going to be giving an account for all work by ourselves. Hey, nobody going to be front, back, left, or right. Just remember that. You are responsible for your life, your soul, your spirit. That's so Father letting us know that we have to be accountable for what we are accepting, the information that we are receiving. We have the ability to check these things, to fact check these things. And so with less than 30 minutes left to our show, I'm going to give the results. I do want to give the call an opportunity to very briefly say their piece, but here is the other result of our poll. The question was asked, which of the two, Facebook only allows me to give you two options, which of the
regarding oppressive theology overall, which do you believe has been more harmful? The options given to the people were the church versus the camp. And interestingly enough, we had 62% weigh in and put the onus on the church versus 38% saying that it was the camps that are more harmful to our community in terms of this oppressive theology that's being pushed out. So we'll go ahead and kind of look at that after we hear from the caller. Our final question will be, we talked earlier about the implosive issues in these Christian organizations and the Christian church. But Israel is hardly innocent in her own implosive issues. We have adopted and even in some ways escalated some of the oppressive theological positions that the church has historically held. And I will ask the panel to think about, in their experiences, in their research, and in their learning, what are some of those oppressive theological positions, which we've looked at already, that you might want to bring out or flesh out. Sister Only Love gave us a quick peek at one of the more jarring and vulgar expectations in terms of theological positions, and what are their observable consequences, and perhaps even the less visible consequences. And normally when we say those things, we're thinking about how have they affected families that in these number of ways that aren't really being discussed in the public. But we know that, yes, we have debates, but then there are families that are quietly suffering, quietly dissolving. So I don't know if we're able to open up the phone lines yet. There was some, okay, I don't think we're able to open. So are we able to open up the phone line yet? Okay, I don't think we're able to do it. So,
yes, we can. Yes, we can. A Barack Obama voice. Yes, we can.
All right.
We do have someone standing by. Let's go to the phone line. 671-858. All right, everyone. Good speaking with. I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. I did speak to Mr. Stout about my personal situation. He has my phone number. So any type of business matters, or if I want to propose, send any information that could be spoken about on the show, I'll be glad to do that. So this is something that has been going on. There's been a lot of talk about deductive reasoning and things like that. The conversation of today was talking about some of the doctrines and the false doctrines. So this is just something I wanted to add. Pretty much. Now, this is not an accusation. I'm not coming against anybody or anything like that. But and also the ways of the heathen that some of the Israels has adopted. For example, now think about what would cause a person to go and put their penis. Oh, this is a M17 mature audience thing, right? So, and put their penis in another, you gotta stop. You gotta keep it going.
Alternative intimate decisions.
Right. But go ahead. I'll let the brother continue. You gotta keep it clean, though. Yeah, sorry. Alternative intimate decisions, right? To the point where the female, you're not gonna give me one, I'm gonna make you give me one. You understand? So that's the type of entity, all right? That the European, that type of thing, that anyhow. So now this that has to be addressed. That has to be brought to light, because you can't keep smiling with your captors if we friends or whatever. And they probably gonna try to go out, Anyway, so the other thing was talking about intermarital decisions. All right, so this is a very good one. 3 minutes. All right, this is all right. So this, when you're talking about intermarital decisions, right? Intermarital misleading devices. That's what I call it. It's a topic of mine today. So today, intermarital doesn't mean just that. It means two people of different genetic makeup. That's evil's attempt on a surface level, to marry unclean flesh to pure, spiritual imperfection to spiritual adeptness and competence, and a demonic with angel. So you see how many levels of perception that they operating on, all right? And so this is why, you know, when the Most High say certain things, it's not for us to question. Now, there's also scripture to scripture. There's also a verse where it says we may have entertained angels unaware. Not all people that are of the genetic or lineage or whatever people, they're good people who want to contribute to the nation of Israel. All right, then. Yeah, so that's just the primary example of where I'm here. Just one small thing I wanted to, because you know, instead of absolute healing, they want us to support perpetual sickness, and so that goes out, you know, for those people who are suffering from any type of deficiency, mental deficiencies. I study alternative healing. You know, there's actual, like, I've tried it on myself. There's actual medicines, herbs to the healing of the nation. And medicines and herbs that will, in a group setting, do as they are supposed to be doing. You know, they'll bring back all your mental faculties. We've been trained to use 5 senses. There's so much more to experience from the rainbow of life. So that's just love. It's just one spectrum or happiness is just one spectrum of a whole bunch of, you know. So, you know, and that's just this briefing is just to, you know, try to, like, maybe have like a little food for thought or something like that, but bring it into the right perspective of how the nations have been playing us, you know, the black and white thing, you know, because it's to avoid the inevitable, the fruition or the fulfillment of the prophecy. They come up with so many mischievous devices to try to avoid judgment. You know, it's not going to be just. All right, my brother, I'm about to bring you on. You got a lot of things you want to talk about, my brother. I'm about to bring you on every time.
You know, we really should bringing out some of these more poignant and prominent attacks on the people, and it sometimes gets presented as doctrine. It gets presented in a way that's it's kind of like hiding the poison. And I hear you when you say that there are these kinds of covert doctrines being pushed as pious or teaches understanding, and maybe we should be more liberal or forgiving in spaces that we're called not to be liberal and forgiving in. And so I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And yes, at another time and another opportunity, it would be great to expand and unpack some of those important thoughts that you shared with us this evening. We have only 20 minutes left, and we really want to talk about some of these doctrines. And we were able to see the results that 38% of the listening audience, or those that participated in the poll, was almost 61 people were able to participate. This was a poll done on the 24th of February, and 38% of the people felt like the camps are bringing in some really dangerous doctrine. We talked about 20 of them, and only gave us a sneak peek into some more. I listed a few more on my page as well, but they got a little risque as well. So with our final moments, we'll weigh in on those doctrines. I'll give you one more result. Our final result was on the 21st of February. I asked, are there any doctrines that oppress men? If so, what are them? And interestingly enough, nobody had any. We could list apparently all day doctrines that come from the pulpit, doctrines that come from the camps, the Knesset, the congregations, the trenches, the threads, the social media, the YouTube, the Instagram. There's plenty of doctrine that is constructed or put together so that we can prohibit the growth, the spiritual growth, or the growing of the spirit, the maturation of the spirit of the woman, limiting her access to the Most High, putting the man in the stead of the Most High so that order is owed to him instead of her father, to our Creator, the Holy One of creation. And so going to look at that. We're going to have a final conversation about that. Well, those who did submit a possible answer would say things such as, we'll give examples such as Genesis 3:17 through 19, where the Most High tells them by the sweat of their brow and the like. But my question then is that doctrine or is that consequence to the breaking of a law? The idea of oppression got replaced with consequence, and the idea of doctrine got replaced with law. We saw that Deuteronomy was brought out with, I'll tell you exactly, Deuteronomy 28, of course. Deuteronomy 28 was considered oppressive to men. Leviticus 26 was considered oppressive to the man. Genesis 3:17 through 19 were all oppressive to the man, and of course there were men who submitted those 3 verses. The others were honest enough to say there really is no doctrine. These are laws. Deuteronomy 28 is not specific to the masculine principle. It does not seek to diminish masculinity. It doesn't seek to limit access to the Most High. It says if you matter of fact, you guys don't know what it is. I'll let the ladies weigh in. What do you think about when the question was asked? Are there any scriptures that oppress the male? They came back with Deuteronomy 28, Leviticus 26, Genesis 3:17 through 19. What are your thoughts about the church receiving the lion's share, 62% of the culpability, but the camp had a pretty impressive showing of 38%? The people are still willing to say the brothers are complicit in reproducing, or the sister said, recycling some of the waste products of the church. I'll go in reverse order. I think it's spoke last, so she'll weigh in on this. And we only have 13 minutes left to the show. So what are your thoughts and closing thoughts? We only have 13 minutes. I'm sorry for limiting you in this way.
It's all good. It's all good. All good. All praise to the Most High. I gotta mute this mic or either turn this down or something. Okay. Or is that somebody I'm hearing in the back, or is that me? Let me check. Okay, yeah, let me mute my mic.
I can't hear my mic. The Google mic is unmuted. I will say it's probably a limited number of oppressive doctrines to the men. There are a few. The Deuteronomy 28, working by the sweat of your brow. You notice those things have to do with curses and work. I've heard, the oppressive doctrine of, you have to grow your beard. A lot of men can't grow the beard, or a lot of men, when they grow their beard, they have missing patches naturally, so they don't want to grow the beard out because it's not going to grow through. But back to the Deuteronomy 28 and the toil of having to work by the sweat. The same word for toil that's used in Genesis 3:17 to 19 is the same Hebrew word that's used in Genesis 3:16. Please go back and do your research on that. But if the brothers were really diligent in going back and learning some basic grammar, you know what I mean? They can go to Genesis 5 and say and see that, when Noah was named, his name is Comfort, because the comfort came from having to work by the sweat of your brow because of the cursed ground. Pretty much that's reversal of it. So the brother got to understand that if you're looking at Deuteronomy 28, are you looking at the first 14 verses that look at ways you can be blessed, or are you looking at the rest of the chapter, which is goes to what, verse 15 or 16 to verse what, 68? I mean, come on, the folks, and I will say, brothers, like brothers and sisters who feel, just talking about you got to work by the sweat of your brow. Work. What's wrong with work? And a lot of times our brothers, I talked about this with a couple of other brothers I know, because I'm into wanting our brothers, who say they want to do better for their family monetarily. 1 minute. 1 minute. All right, monetarily. to get you an education or create opportunities for yourself where you don't have to do physical labor. A lot of our brothers do physical labor, and they're not compensated enough for that physical labor. Physical labor is very hard on the body. So if you're being oppressed by the physical labor of your job, you're not getting paid nothing but mites for it. Create yourself an opportunity to be a businessman or learn another skill, or be able to be open-minded to learn another skill. Ain't nothing wrong with a cubicle job. You're not going to lose your masculinity if you got a cubicle job. So that's what I'll say. Look at the blessings and not necessarily the curses. Learn Genesis 5 that the reverse is curse on the 12. I yield.
Wow, right on the money. Okay, we'll move on to Only Love. You got 3 minutes. Okay, so y'all probably know which doctrine I gotta touch on, and it's connected to the 12 tribes chart. I'm not gonna bring out any big old risque, because I'm blushing over here. But the whole every African is a Hamite. You know, I think when we look at the church and like what's more harmful, the church or the camp, it's funny because, you know, with the rabbis who created the curse of Ham, then it was really the church that made that popular. And then that's another thing that a lot of camps, this disdain for Africa, they don't know that this is coming actually from, you know, a doctrine Jewish rabbis made up, and also something that Christians promote. And so it was interesting to me to hear the feedback. I think the only difference is when the church or Christianity has a negative doctrine, or like the Waco cult in Texas where some Christians go really off, they still have a whole media system to kind of clean it up. Whereas when we have one person, like a Yahweh Ben Yahweh, you know, in Florida, because we don't have that whole system behind us, we're all tainted with that guilt by association that Mr. Hebrew 1 talks about. So I really think that it's important that anyone coming into this truth studies to show yourself approved. Like everyone will be accountable for every idle word that was uttered, and you have to have a personal relationship with Yah yourself. I'm really concerned that when people come into the truth, there's really a lot of people are not being discipled. They're not being trained, and then they're jumping up and saying they're teachers. And so it's important, if you're new to this truth, like Shanti said, like studying the culture that our scripture was written in, studying the languages. You don't have to be fluent, but even going online with Blue Letter Bible or with a concordance and looking up what these words mean, and also being humble that you may have been taught lies, not just about your identity, but lies about women, lies about family, lies about, you know, the law, quote unquote, or consequences, and being humble enough to just go before Yah and say, I'm a child, can you teach me? And you know, Messiah said you have to come into the kingdom like a child. Even some of us who may be coming into this truth from being ministers, from going to theology school, we still have to start from zero. And so are we humble enough to be taught? But it was just interesting to me to see, I guess, the stats for the church versus the camp. But for me, I see a lot of the church in the camp. Thank you so much for that, sister. Amina, your turn.
I would say my closing thoughts is one of the key for me. Sorry, I'm on mute. I would say my closing thoughts is one of the key long-standing, long-running issues is this conversation that we saw the sons of Belial doing in the book of Samuel, laying with the women who came to the temple. This whole conversation of sex equals marriage. It's attacking the very foundation of nationhood, nation builder, which is the family unit. And so once you compromise this space, once you compromise the whole other half of the nation, which is the feminine principle, once you tell her that she no longer has a support system and that she's subject to whatever the whim of the individual is, you know, the children thereby are affected, the stability of the nation is affected. And we've seen this doctrine, this false doctrine again, with people who knew who they were. They knew exactly who their fathers were. their father's father was. So I would leave the congregation. I would leave the listeners with this: that the issues that we're facing are human conditions and issues, and Israel continues to fall prey to these, even with the rule book in hand. And so, as we look at the things that others are doing, we understand that we're susceptible to them as well, and begin to take responsibility for them. Because if we mess up the very foundation, which is after Adam had a job, the next thing the Most High is like, it's not good that you should be alone. And if you mess up that next step, then guess what? It's still alone. And so with that, I relinquish the mic and thank everybody for tuning in.
I'm going to go ahead and yield all of my time and give the last, it looks like 4 minutes to even the army. I'll say this. Thank you very much for joining us. Most I thank you for, quickly we were a blessing in your sight, and prayerfully we brought out some important practice. Ima Yahudi, thank you so much for coming through. Please close us out with your final thoughts, and if you want to give away a word of praise, hallelujah.
Hallelujah. I got a call now, album. It's 15 months listening.
I do. Ima Yahudi, did I say the army all those times? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm so honest. Bear with me, and I'll close out a prayer of Manasseh. Almighty Heavenly Father, El of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and of their upright descendants. You who have made the heaven and the earth with all their creatures, who have feathered the sea with your word of command, who have shut up the great depth and filled it with your terrible glorious name, before whom all things shudder and tremble before your power. For the majesty of your glory is unbearable, and the anger of your threatening against sinners is endurable. Unmeasurable and unsearchable is the mercy you promise. You are the mighty one, tender-hearted, long-suffering, and most merciful, and grateful of the wickedness of men, and regretful, of the wickedness of men. You therefore, Yah Elohim of the upright, have not ordained repentance for the upright. For Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who did not sin against you, you have ordained repentance for a sinner like me. For my sins are more numerous than the sands of the sea. My transgressions are multiplied, Yah. They are multiplied. I am unworthy to look up and see the height of the heavens, for the multitude of my iniquities. I am laid down with many an iron fetter, so that I bend beneath my sin, and I have no relief. Because I have provoked your anger and done what is wrong in your sight, setting up abominations and multiplying offenses. So therefore I bend the knee of my heart, begging you for kindness. I have sinned, Yah, I have sinned, and I know my transgression. I earnestly beseech you, forgive me, Yah, forgive me. Do not destroy me in the midst of my transgression. Do not be angry with me forever and lay up evil for me, or condemn me to the lowest part of the earth. For you, Almighty Heavenly Father of those who repent, and you shall manifest your goodness towards me. For unworthy as I am, you will save me in the abundance of your mercy. And I will praise you continually as long as I live. For all the hosts of heaven sing your praise, and yours is the glory forever. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Talking to the Most High. Forgive us. Oh, I'm going to put tears. Oh, that's such a goodness. Hallelujah. I want to give a quick word of comfort and covering for our sister Malaka, who wasn't able to join us. She has a family emergency, but may the Most High comfort and cover that family as they go through what they need to go through.
Most High be with them, and that a favorable resolution be upon them. I wanted to make sure that we gave a little time to that. I know this is about our last minute mark. So that's all I have to say.